Right now, somewhere in the back of your mind, you are a little bored. You feel it as a faint itch, a quiet pull toward your phone, the fridge, anything else. You assume it's a flaw, a small glitch in an otherwise busy life, the thing you're supposed to defeat with enough notifications. But the real answer is far stranger. That dull, restless feeling is not a malfunction. It is one of the oldest and most powerful forces ever installed in a human mind. It built tools. It crossed oceans. It may be the single reason your species ever climbed down from the trees, instead of sitting still and quietly going extinct. You were not designed for comfort. You were designed to be unable to stand it. Let's start with what boredom actually is. Not the dictionary version, the version happening inside your skull. Psychologist John Eastwood spent years trying to pin it down. He landed on a definition that sounds simple and isn't. Boredom, he said, is the unfulfilled desire for satisfying activity. Read that again. It's not the absence of something to do. You can be surrounded by things to do and still be bored out of your mind. It's the absence of something that feels worth doing. That gap is the entire feeling. Your attention is awake and reaching for the world, and the world is handing it nothing. The engine is running. The wheels aren't turning. And your brain hates that. It hates it so much that it will do almost anything to escape. In 2014, a psychologist named Timothy Wilson ran an experiment that should be more famous than it is. He put people in a plain room. No phone, no book, nothing. Just a chair and their own thoughts for 15 minutes. That was the whole task. Sit and think. Most people couldn't stand it. So Wilson added a twist. In the room, there was a small device. If a person wanted, they could press a button and give themselves a painful electric shock. He had already asked these same people earlier whether they'd pay money to avoid that shock. They had said yes. They hated it. And yet, left alone with nothing to do, a quarter of the women and 2/3 of the men shocked themselves on purpose. One man pressed the button 190 times. Sit with that for a second. People chose physical pain over the discomfort of an empty mind. They chose to hurt rather than to be bored. Why would any creature be built like that? Why would your brain treat stillness as something close to a threat? To understand that, you have to go back. Not a few hundred years. Hundreds of thousands. Picture one of your distant ancestors. Not a caveman from a cartoon. A real human being, just as smart as you, standing on a grassland in the heat with nothing in particular to do. The hunting is done. The shelter is built. The belly is full. By every comfort-based measure, this is a good moment. Safe. Fed. Resting. And yet something inside them stirs. A restlessness. A feeling that there should be more. They start to fiddle with a rock. They wander to the edge of the camp to see what's over the ridge. They poke at a problem nobody asked them to solve. That restless ancestor is the one you descended from, not the perfectly content one. The contented one stayed exactly where they were and learned nothing new. The bored one moved. This is where two researchers, Wijnand van Tilburg and Igou, changed how scientists think about the whole feeling. They argued that boredom isn't just an empty state. It's a signal with a purpose. It's your mind telling you that what you're doing right now is meaningless, and that your time and your attention deserve to be spent on something that matters more. Boredom, in their view, is a search engine for meaning. When the feeling hits, it doesn't just make you uncomfortable. It pushes you toward exploration, toward novelty, toward the harder, richer thing instead of the easy, hollow one. In their studies, people who were made to feel bored became more likely to seek out activities they found genuinely meaningful afterward. The discomfort was doing a job. It was steering them. Think about what that means across millions of years. A mind that feels nothing when understimulated would sit still forever. A mind that feels a sharp, nagging dissatisfaction will get up and find out what's behind the next hill. Multiply that tiny push across thousands of generations and millions of restless individuals, and you get migration. You get tool making. You get the slow, stubborn accumulation of every discovery your species ever made. You are not the descendant of the satisfied. You are the descendant of the dissatisfied. But it goes deeper than just movement. Boredom doesn't only make you wander, it rewires what your mind can do. A psychologist named Sandi Mann ran a study that sounds almost like a joke. She gave people the most mind-numbing task she could think of: copying numbers out of a phone book, by hand, for a long time. Then she gave them a creative challenge. Come up with as many uses as you can for a pair of plastic cups. The people who had been bored first came up with more ideas, and stranger ones, more inventive ones. Mann's conclusion was elegant. When your mind has nothing external to grab onto, it turns inward. It starts to wander, to drift, to connect things that have no business being connected. That wandering is not wasted time. It's the exact mental state where new ideas are born. The blank, restless stretch you're so desperate to fill is the soil creativity actually grows in. So here is a question worth holding. What happens to a species when it finally invents a way to never be bored again? Because that is precisely what you did. For all those hundreds of thousands of years, boredom had one feature that made it useful. It was unbearable, but unavoidable. When it came, you had to do something real to escape it. Make something. Go somewhere. Solve something. The discomfort had a cost, and the cost is what made it valuable. It forced motion. Then, in the span of a single generation, you built a device that ends the feeling instantly. No effort, no risk, no movement at all. You reach into your pocket, and the ancient signal goes quiet. Look closely at what's actually happening in that moment. The restlessness rises. The same restlessness that once pushed your ancestors over the next ridge. The same one that built every tool you've ever used. And before it can do its job, before it can point you towards something meaningful, you smother it with a bottomless scroll of things engineered to be just interesting enough to hold you and never interesting enough to satisfy you. The signal fires. You silence it. The signal fires again. You silence it again. You are taking the one feeling that evolved to drive you toward meaning, and you are answering it hundreds of times a day with the exact opposite of meaning. And the strangest part is how it feels. It doesn't feel like exploring. It doesn't feel like discovery. You can spend an hour this way and stand up feeling emptier than when you sat down. That emptiness is not random. It's the feeling of a search engine for meaning being fed an endless stream of nothing. Your ancestors felt boredom and built a world. You feel boredom and reach for a screen designed by people whose entire job is to make sure you never feel it long enough to act on it. So let me ask you something gentler than it sounds. When was the last time you let yourself be bored? Truly bored. No phone, no podcast, no second screen. Just you and a stretch of empty time in the slow rising itch of a mind reaching for something. If you can't remember, you are not alone. Most people alive today have quietly lost access to one of the oldest experiences a human can have. The experience of sitting with an unfilled mind until it starts, on its own, to wander somewhere new. That wandering is where the ideas live. The shower thought that solves the problem you'd been grinding at for days. The sudden memory you needed. The plan that assembles itself out of nowhere. None of it comes while you're scrolling. It comes in the gaps, the waiting, the boredom you've been trained to delete the instant it appears. Here's what's worth understanding. Boredom was never the enemy. It was the messenger. The feeling itself is unpleasant by design, because a comfortable signal would be too easy to ignore. It has to nag. It has to itch. It has to be just irritating enough that you can't sit in it forever. That irritation is the whole mechanism. It's a push, and the push has a direction, and the direction is towards something that matters more than what you're doing right now. When you numb the messenger, you don't lose the discomfort. You only lose the message. So the next time it comes for you, that familiar dull itch in a waiting room or a slow afternoon or a quiet moment before sleep, try something almost no one does anymore. Don't reach for anything. Let it build. Let it get uncomfortable. Let your mind start to claw at the emptiness and reach for the next hill. Because that reaching is not a flaw in you. It is the oldest, most human thing you have. It is the same force that walked your ancestors out of Africa and across every continent on Earth. It is the engine that made a clever, restless ape into the only creature that builds cathedrals and writes symphonies and asks why it exists at all. You spend so much of your life trying to escape this feeling. You were never meant to escape it. You were meant to follow it. So right now, somewhere in the back of your mind, you are a little bored. Don't kill it. That faint, restless pull is not the absence of something. It is the presence of everything you were built to become, still whispering at you across 100,000 years, asking the same question it asked the first human who ever felt it. What's over the next hill?